always changes, you know, and then that's kind of the nature of the beast. Been moving around, kind of shifting the focus away from the people making changes to plans. They still have till March 31st to make a final plan choice for 2026, but kind of shifting the focus to people who are turning 65.
How do you stay up to date on all the changes?
I've got some really great general agents that are up the line from me that I rely on. I meet with them. In May, I'll be going to a national conference in Salt Lake. It's all put together by our field marketing folks. They're based in Salt Lake. So there's just all kinds of webinars and seminars. Tough for me to go to or to attend because they're oftentimes right in the middle of the school day and I'm still teaching. I can't just go Wednesday 10 or 10 a.m. To something, even if it's online. But next year, at this time, I will.
You're retiring?
I'm retiring this year. I'm going to be doing reinsurance full time. Still playing gigs. Of course, still be playing.
Musicians never stop.
You know,
Pete Seeger played up until his very end. You know?
I can't imagine not playing. I mean, I have to because physically that may happen. I have numbness in my index finger. I have difficult time with my right gripper. There are physical things that I'm not where I used to be just 10 years ago, physically. I still enjoy the heck out of it. Are you still studying voice? Is that a once a week lesson that you do?
Rebecca got a full-time job up in Portland, I think, so she stays up there, so I usually Zoom for my lessons on Wednesday afternoons. And once a month, I try to schedule an in-person lesson at her home, but she lives way out west of Dallas, so it's a 3-hour process of 45, 50 minutes to drive there, hour lesson, 45, 50 minutes to drive back.
Yeah, that's got to be the plan for the afternoon. I'm sorry, I know this person,
Rebecca from Hertz.
I know the name.
I got her name from Marcia.
Oh, okay.
She's been very good for me. I'm planning to sing for service in April.
You're singing what?
Singing
For the Sunday service here?
in April, yeah.
What are you going to be singing?
Kate Wolf's Give Yourself to Love, which I sang at Lori's at my wedding reception. The first time I ever sang solo in front of a group. And John Denver's Poems, Prayers, and Promises.
Who's accompanying you?
Well, I think my friends Tim and Kathy Crosby are going to sing. I rented a Kathy Friday at Safeway. Told her she thinks that's open.
Good morning. And before we get started, I would like to invite everyone to turn to the camera over here. I don't know the camera numbers, and wave to the folks of Simenfalva who will be watching us. I don't know I've forgotten how to say hello in Transylvanian, Hungarian, so yeah, we're done. Okay, anyway, so good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Salem, Oregon. I'm Janet Stevens and I will be your celebrant today. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious tradition that came about with the 1961 merger of two distinct liberal religious denominations, the Unitarians and, guess what? The Universalists. Yay! Last September, I joined my friends Mako, Dell, and Christine on a pilgrimage to Transylvania, where, in many ways, Unitarianism began. We visited historic and informative sites and met amazing people, all of whom were extremely welcoming, open, and accepting. We hope that you feel welcome here today. Whomever you are, whomever you love, however you identify, and wherever you are on your spiritual journey. We are really excited to share our stories with you today and hope that you will stay after the service and share your stories with us. Now, let us worship together. Please rise in body or spirit for our gathering hymn, which is number 37. And this is a Hungarian hymn, by the way. God who fills the universe. Now, would you please join me as we recite together our affirmation? Love is our doctrine, compassion is our way. Here we seek to create a joyful home for free religious exploration, build a community of caring fellowship, nurture the hopes, and serve the needs of our world. I'm going to take a little side thing here because something occurred to me as I looked out around here. There's a lot of past pilgrims to Transylvania here today. If you feel comfortable and you have taken this pilgrimage before, would you please raise your hand? Wow. Wow. Well, feel free to think of things that we kind of, maybe you saw differently, and we'd love to discuss that with you. Anyway, our itinerary included visiting our partner church in Simenfalva and attending Sunday services. We asked if we could read a letter to the congregation during the service and received permission. In our message, we said that we light a chalice for Simenfalva each Sunday. Reverend Ursabet told us they were not aware that UUCS did this. She was very moved and thanked us for this kindness. So I'm going to invite Mako up to help me. As is our practice each Sunday, we will light 3 chalices this morning. The first is for all the members and friends of this, the Salem congregation. The second is for the members and friends at our partner church in Simenfalva, Transylvania. And we light our lantern for children and youth everywhere, as they are our future. Let's sing the flames into life. I'm going to invite the young and the young at heart up front so I can tell you a story about the roots of Unitarianism. So, did you guys know that until about 65 years ago, there were no UUs? Didn't exist. But there were folks who followed the Unitarian and the Universalist faiths. Unitarianism began over 500 years ago in Europe, particularly in Transylvania and Poland. Back then, most European countries were Christian, and the kings told the people of their countries what they had to believe and how they had to worship. Christian churches of the time believed in the Trinity. Now, the Trinity means that there's one God, but that God has 3 parts: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Early Unitarians argued that God is one, not a 3-part being. And they were often persecuted, and that means that some people picked on them, bullied them, and told them they weren't good people because of their beliefs. In 1568, King John Sigismund of Transylvania passed a law that allowed folks to choose their own ministers and preach their own beliefs. This allowed Unitarians to believe and teach that God is one. Like us, they also valued freedom of belief and tolerance, and they thought people should use reason as a spiritual guide instead of just following strict rules and traditions. Many of today's UUs follow non-traditional spiritual paths, which can make it kind of difficult to explain our faith to people who belong to the traditional churches. I know that when I was growing up UU, sometimes I really felt like an outsider. But in Transylvania, there's Unitarians everywhere. There's even Unitarian high schools, which, in spite of the name, have kids of all ages. So any of you who are school age and up would be able to go to the Unitarian high school, and they have kids of all faiths as well. Children there do not attend Sunday school or RE, but at the Unitarian schools, the kids have religious instruction each week. Christine and Dell and Mako will be offering more insight into what we learned on our pilgrimage. And there are also some wonderful books about the history of our faith. And you're welcome to your own opinion about it. And this is one of my favorites. And they're books for kids and adults. This is actually a kid's book, but believe me, it was right up my alley. And a lot of these like this are available to borrow here at the church or really easily available through the UUA. So I encourage you to get to know a little bit more about the history of our faith. If the center aisle would now form the love arch, we will sing the kids back to RA. I know the feeling.
Our musical offering that the choir has worked hard on these past couple weeks is actually in your hymnal. It's 1043. It's Zekuri Aldash. It is in traditional Transylvanian, and the music is by, and I just had it right here, Elizabeth Norton. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Joan Stembridge, one of your Lifelines lay ministers. Lifelines lay ministers are members of UUCS who help people in times of need. We can be identified by our lavender stoles and badges. You can reach out to us by visiting the Lifelines table in Hanneman Hall each Sunday after the service, or by contacting the contact information in the order of service. Each week we gather for worship. We share the joys and sorrows of members of this community. We know that joys shared are often magnified as we celebrate together, and sorrows shared may be lightened as we are reminded that we are not alone. As I read them, we will light a candle to symbolize the truth that is shared and to remind us that what we hold together brings more of the light and understanding and compassion to us all. And I will start with, I will call it a candle of remembrance. And this is from Dina Trieste. This candle I light in remembrance of my dear daughter, Stacy Cozart, who left this world 4 years ago today. And I will tell you now 2 joys. The first, written by Margaret Gregg. We were honored to witness Annie and Jeff Minden in their wedding finery yesterday as we gathered to celebrate their new lives together. It was a joyful gathering of family and friends. And the second joy from Lifelines, the team, we are thankful for the new stained glass windows installed Friday in the foyer. What a beautiful addition to our building. And we light one final candle to remind us of the joys and sorrows carried in this community, which remain unspoken and in our hearts. Thank you.
Told you earlier that we read a letter to the congregation, and so I wanted to give you the text of that because it was essentially from you as well as us. Dear friends, as members and representatives of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Salem, Oregon, USA, we would like to express our deep appreciation for the warm welcome you have extended us. We feel very privileged to be here in Transylvania, the birthplace of our shared Unitarian faith. Around 35 years ago, our congregations formed a covenant of partnership and agreed to share our visions and goals, joys and sorrows, and to extend welcome and support to each other. We thank you for sharing your time, culture, and community with us. You have honored us by inviting us to join your worship service and be part of your Thanksgiving celebration. In the United States, it is a Unitarian Universalist tradition to light a chalice at the beginning of each Sunday worship service. In Salem, we light an additional chalice each week for you, the members and friends of the Simenfalva Unitarian Church. The lighting of a chalice for your congregation reminds us of our heritage, the love and sacrifice of our spiritual ancestors, and that faith, filled with love and kindness and freedom of conscience, binds us together even though we are far apart. We are proud to be your partner church and hope that our relationship will last well beyond another 35 years.
Seated as we sing our heart song. It is 396. I know the doors will open in your blue hymnals, the dark blue ones. And then we're just going to sing this twice through, no round today.
I know my fear will turn. Christine just reminded me that I should tell you that we sang that song, I Know This Rose Will Open, in the Thanksgiving service in Simenfalva. Good morning. My name is Mako Hayashi-Mayflower, and I would like to tell you what made me want to go on the 2025 pilgrimage to the birthplace of Unitarianism. I have been a member of this congregation since 1980, according to my name badge. And that means I've been a member for 46 years. But for many of those years, I was not an active member. I had joined when this church was lay-led in a much smaller building on 19th Street. I really liked the lay-led format because it was so different from the mainstream Christian churches that I grew up in Hawaii. It was much more relaxed and not regimented, even unpredictable. Then, when the congregation decided to call ministers, it became much too churchy for me. It was back to sermons, choirs, hymns I was not familiar with, and too much formality. So I stopped coming for years, except very occasionally. However, I still firmly supported the idea of religious freedom. After all, I live here in America, and that is what this country was founded on, in spite of recent efforts that are attempting to contradict this fact. So I regularly sent in monetary support, even though I was not attending. Then, after some years passed, it occurred to me that if I was financially supporting this church, I should be getting something in return. So I started attending again. At first sporadically, and later I became a greeter, so I was obliged to come at least once a month. And I became a fan of Reverend Rick Davis's sermons. He was a very lively and engaging speaker, and he could get his points across really well. I can't tell you I remember what he said in most of his sermons, although they were all very good. However, I do remember very well him speaking very passionately about the people to whom we Unitarians owe our freedom of religion: Michael Servetus, David Francis, or Francis David, and King John Sigismund of Transylvania. Those three names really stayed with me. Here we have Michael Servetus. He was a Spanish physician, theologian, and humanist. He wrote many books, but two in 1531 and 1533 questioned the doctrine of the Trinity, as well as the close relationship between the Pope and the Emperor, which made him a danger to the Catholic Church and to the throne. Therefore, he was burned at the stake for heresy during the Inquisition. But his new ideas of freedom of religion and speech lived on and became more popular after his death. Next, we have Francis David. He was a very charismatic religious leader whose debates about Unitarianism convinced King John Sigismund to convert to it. Very unfortunately for Francis David and the world, after the king converted to Unitarianism and signed the Edict of Torda, he died just 2 years later after an accident. And the next king was not of the same tolerant mind, which was really par for the course of Western religious history. He put Francis David in prison for life for continuing to promote religious freedom, and he died in the Diva Citadel prison in 1579, our hopefully only Unitarian martyr. This is King John Sigismund. In 1565, King John was ruling Transylvania. He was a very exceptional monarch in that he had a very inquiring and tolerant mind. After listening to Francis David's debates about the unity and freedom of religion, he was converted and signed the very important document in Unitarian history, the Edict of Torda, in 1568, which gave his people freedom to choose which religion to believe. whereas until then, all kings forced their subjects to convert to their religion upon pain of death. This was the very first law that increased religious tolerance. John Sigismund was the only Unitarian monarch in history, which makes him a singular man. It was of great consequence and misfortune for the world that King John died only 2 years after signing the Edict of Torda, because had he lived, the path to greater religious tolerance may not have been as long and as arduous as it again became after his death. So, after hearing from Reverend Rick about these three men, who are the three pillars of our Unitarian religion, I greatly admired them for their strong belief in religious freedom. But I never really considered going to see where Unitarianism started. It just seemed so very distant. However, when talk of pilgrimages to our sister church in Simenfalva would come up at intervals, my interest was piqued. And I expressed interest in going twice before, but then backed out because I just did not know what to expect of this kind of a trip. However, that feeling had changed by 2024 when the prospect of this latest pilgrimage came up. Maybe it was the fact that I had become more adventurous or that I was getting older, so I need to travel while I'm still physically able. Also, UUCS has had this sister church relationship with Simenfalva going all the way back to 1990. And I was feeling we really should get to know more about this church and the people over there. After all, we honor them every Sunday when we light this candle for them all the way over there in Simenfalva. I also think a large part of my change of heart was due to the fact that I have become more invested in this congregation in general and was more interested in getting to know my fellow pilgrims on a different level than just here at UUCS. And it is a trip I have very fond memories of, both the pre-trip to Prague, Vienna, Salzburg, and Budapest, as well as the official pilgrimage to Transylvania's Unitarian historical cities and sites, and of course, to our sister church congregation in Simenfalva. The next slide, please. I was moved by seeing the places where Francis David preached so eloquently he single-handedly converted thousands to the doctrine of religious freedom. And I even saw the rock, or replica thereof, he stood on to make his best-known speech, saw his likeness in statues, busts, and portraits, and of course the prison cell in the Diva Citadel where he died a martyr for the cause of our religious freedom. I wanted to see the tomb of King John Sigismund because he was the only Unitarian monarch in history. He and his mother Isabella's tombs are quite unusual that they are Unitarians buried in a corner of St. Michael's Catholic Cathedral in Alba Iulia. However, this is fully in keeping with his belief in religious tolerance. Francis David and King John had similar religious journeys from Catholicism to Lutheranism to Calvinism and finally to Unitarianism as their religious home ground. I am very gratified that I have seen for myself these places where Unitarianism was born and flourished, albeit briefly. That is all the more reason to be proud of our religion's origins and the strength that has kept it alive. I met present-day Unitarians who are so resolute in and proud of their belief in this faith. The Unitarians of Transylvania are preserving, protecting, and promoting the history of our religion as steadfastly and as wholeheartedly as they can. Although American Unitarianism has beliefs and practices that have evolved from those in Transylvania, the common origin of our religion ties us together. I dearly wish we could have spent more time with the people in the Simenfalva congregation, and I am very happy that I joined this 2025 pilgrimage to Transylvania. Thank you.
We looked at the map many times before leaving for our trip to Romania to visit our partner church in Simenfalva. We were to first visit a place called CLUJ, always stumbling with how to pronounce this word. We arrived at the Cluj International Airport, where we were greeted by our Unitarian hosts, then driven to our destination, where we were shown our accommodations, and the Unitarian Church's headquarters, a combination of a guest house, a restaurant, and meeting rooms. At this time, I was thinking about the trip in the same way I had about other traveling and touring that I had done. A great opportunity to visit an area where I had never been, with a bonus of learning about our partner church. The first day after our arrival, we took a walking tour of Old Town Cluj and experienced an astonishing discovery of nearly 6 full blocks of Unitarian buildings. The House of Religious Freedom, a community center and headquarters for the Unitarian Church, the Bishop's Office, a Unitarian high school, a Unitarian church, and the statue of Ferenc David, founder and first bishop of Unitarianism. During the tour of the high school, I was especially moved by the words of Reverend Zolt, serving as chaplain, who pointed out a colorful star-shaped motif drawn on the floor as you enter the building. He said, each student stands on this star and is encouraged to experience all the different directions they can take in life: science, music, the arts, history. At one point, we had a time that we could sit down, as Reverend Zolt described, how the students gather each week for a prayer and discussion about the challenges of their days. He talked about the 2 most important things they teach: wisdom and humility. He said, these are 2 characteristics that all should aim for to be a good person. There is a clear focus on these teachings as expressed by Reverend Zolt and symbolized by the dove representing humility, encircled by the serpent representing wisdom on their Unitarian insignia. In answer to a question, Reverend Zolt shared his personal journey as he teared up talking about the cruelty of a Roman Catholic school to the acceptance of a Unitarian group as his reason for his Unitarian faith. The next day, we began our bus tour with 27 people, 4 from Corvallis, 19 from Olympia, and 4 from Salem. We toured the salt mine and the Monument of Religious Freedom in Torda, under the mentorship of Ferenc Mako, our guide and Unitarian minister. While at the salt mine, we saw some beautiful traditional scarves in many different colors. We picked one out in yellow and bought it, thinking we could display it in our service here at home. We very proudly shared our purchase with Ferenc, who responded, "That's a Romanian scarf," clearly questioning why we would buy such a scarf. This left us feeling surprised and puzzled. After all, weren't we in Romania? We thought he would be pleased with our purchase. This was our first lesson in understanding our trip from the perspective of our Unitarian hosts. Ferenc proved to be extremely knowledgeable about the history of Romania and Transylvania, blended with the history of Unitarianism, which we learned are inseparable. As he began his talk on the bus, I noticed he was referring to the city of Cluj by another name. Again, a name that seemed difficult to pronounce. Kolozsvár. He explained that this is the Hungarian name for the city. Unitarians are Hungarian, so we used this name. I didn't understand the importance of this statement until later in the trip. That evening, we were dropped off at a central place where we split off to go to our partner churches. This is where we met Reverend Erzsébet and her husband, who drove us to Simenfalva, where we had dinner and were shown our accommodations. Rather than the expected homestays, Reverend Erzsébet arranged for us to stay in a guest house together located in the middle of the village. Additionally, she arranged for us to have 3 meals a day in the homes of different families. These shared meals with families in their homes were meaningful and fun and gave us a glimpse into their lives. The meals were elaborate, time-consuming, and traditional, serving palinka, a strong homemade brew, before and after meals. It was here that we met the elder bread maker and her granddaughter, who showed us how to make bread, 7 large loaves at a time, mixed in a large trough and placed in a large outdoor oven. While making bread, the grandmother talked with us about how it was to live there during communism, with translation by her granddaughter. We also later visited the home of a Roma basket maker, where we had a hands-on experience with basket making and saw many of the beautiful baskets they make and sell. On Sunday, we attended their beautiful old church on the hill. Most people walked to church. Men and women sat separately during the service. Since it was Thanksgiving, we experienced communion, serving bread and white wine. They use either red or white wine, depending on which is donated for the service. They ended the service with a heartfelt singing of the Hungarian national anthem. As we continued our tour on the big bus, Ferenc pointed out areas where buildings and whole neighborhoods had been bombed and rebuilding had been recently completed. He pointed out old concrete buildings that he referred to as communist buildings. He talked about the rebuilding of Unitarian structures and reviving ownership in a Unitarian archives building that is closed and still in the courts because the Romanian government does not want to return it. He talked about the Nicene Creed of 325, which established the doctrine of the Trinity, and how the Unitarian belief in one God was declared heresy, and how Unitarians were hunted all over Europe, and how, after World War I in 1920, their homeland, Transylvania, part of Hungary, was given over to Romania. Near the end of our tour, we visited the prison in Diva, where Ferenc David was imprisoned for his beliefs and eventually died. Our guide, Ferenc, often referred to our trip as a pilgrimage, and for the first time, I began to understand it in this way. It was here that I started describing our trip with words like courage, resilience, strength, tenacity, wisdom, and a word that Reverend Ursabet used to describe her Unitarian community, stubborn. I thought, these are words of the Spirit. I thought about the courage and resilience of people whose homeland was consistently destroyed by a series of complicated wars, then given over to another country, and whose destruction is still close by and visible. I thought about the stubbornness and tenacity it takes to embrace your culture and your language and your beliefs while forced to live in a country that wants you to conform to their culture and language and beliefs. I thought about the wisdom of building monuments and restoring buildings to remember where they came from and where they want to go. I thought about the humility of a people who embrace community, hospitality, and authenticity as they open their homes and share their stories and their meals with us. I began to have a deeper understanding of the sacred within and the ability to bring forth the spiritual force that keeps us hopeful and full of grace through difficult times. I began to understand the concept of pilgrimage, a sacred journey, often physical and challenging, to a holy place or a site of deep personal significance, undertaken for spiritual renewal, to connect with faith traditions. We began our trip thinking we were arriving in the big city of Cluj, visiting our partner church in Simenfalva while touring Romania. We ended our trip with the perspective of our Unitarian partners, arriving in the big city of Kolishvar, visiting our partner church in Simenfalva while touring Transylvania, their beloved homeland. I'm forever grateful for having this experience. I hope many more in our congregation will say yes to going on this pilgrimage. And most of all, I hope we can reciprocate to support our Unitarian partners in a visit here to our beloved homeland. Thank you.
Hi, I joined UUCS when we were FUSO in 1994. That's when I joined, and John and family. 30 years later, in 2025, like Janet and Dell and Mako, I signed on for this pilgrimage, really just out of curiosity for the Transylvania countryside, and along with a little bit of interest in the Unitarian history. Little did I know how enriching this experience would be, and how much I fell in love with our Transylvanian sisters and brothers and their strong Unitarian life. Along the way of the pilgrimage, we took a deep dive into Unitarian and Transylvanian history, which you've already heard about. We took a subtle and more powerful dive into the daily lives and spiritual journeys of these wonderful folk. I came home to my country in these disorienting times with new guidelines for living my life and new pride in being a Unitarian. In Simenfalva, we attended their Sunday service, which you've heard, which was their annual Thanksgiving service. It's a celebration of gratitude. The message shared by Reverend Ertl in her homily there was simply, gratitude is the breath of the soul, in which she shared the following reading from Luke 17:11 through 19, the Samaritan. Breathing keeps me alive, and gratitude is like breathing. If we are alive, we breathe, and if we breathe, we can give thanks. In these current times, we now all need to be reminded of what we are grateful for. During this Thanksgiving service, communion was offered, and we pilgrims got to partake. I learned from Reverend Ertl about their Unitarian celebration of communion. She said, at the Last Supper, Jesus said, the wine is my blood, the bread is my body. But, she says, for us, may be stronger the community, when Jesus gave the bread for his friends. But communion also means cleaning of our souls. And the most important thing we remember of Jesus, we have to try to be like him, she said. Even though the Transylvanian Unitarians have a strong Christian philosophy, they only preach from the Gospels, using the roots of Jesus' specific lessons. Christians and students of religious freedom can certainly support these lessons, and we do here in Salem. There were 3 important messages that we heard consistently throughout our pilgrimage, which was the creation of Unitarianism. First, God is one, the radical belief of Michael Servetus and amplified by David Ferencz, that the Trinity did not exist in any of the oldest Greek manuscripts of the Bible, but were inserted later by scribes. We Unitarians here in America allow all to be members of our community, whether we espouse the belief in God or not. We study the religions of the world, which have many paths to one God. The second message we heard was of the religious freedom, which specifically identified Unitarianism as a recognized religion through the Edict of Torah that you've heard of. It does seem like our country here has forgotten that there are many paths one can take on their spiritual journey. And I have deep respect that we here in Salem are exposed to these journeys, whether through learning of world religions or simple spiritual philosophies that make up our religious education. The third message of wisdom and humility is on the insignia which you've already seen of the dove and the serpent. Reverend Ertl tells us this is based on Matthew's Evangelium. She says, "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." Ertl says, these are important marks of our religion. We often use these words when the young members of our congregation confirm. Along with the three strong messages that we continued to hear throughout our days, we experienced spiritual themes throughout these 10 days. UUA has specifically aligned our principles, interdependence and generosity particularly, with some of Transylvanian Unitarianism, but not all. Here are those subtle but daily themes we received in our relationships built with our new friends. The theme of courage. Transylvanian Unitarians kept their way of life, language, culture, and religious belief in one God through many complicated wars, communism, and persecution. We saw evidence of communism throughout the countryside, and even our UUCS's earliest pilgrimages, folks from our congregation experienced the communist way of life of no indoor plumbing and no heat indoors. Bonnie's shaking her head. She remembers that family. And we stayed with her family. We had an afternoon with her family. Many people in I'm going off book. Many people in Simenfalva asked us, did you know Bonnie? Did you know Don Cleveland? Did you know blah, blah, blah? They stayed connected to our congregation through the 20-some years that we've been visiting them. And it was really fun to think about, oh, Bonnie sat in this kitchen and Don sat at that table. It was really connecting. The experience of communism lives on in Simenfalva because they have no natural gas piped into their communities. They can heat their homes by electricity, but most households relied on their wood stoves for heat. And this is a photo of this glorious wood stove that was in my room in our guest house. We each had our own wood stove, as big and beautiful as that. And the man in the picture is Ertzebet's husband, who came in every night and built a fire in each of our 4 rooms for our heat. So they were courageous in living through their Transylvanian history. I came away realizing now we here in the States are being asked to be courageous in our own situation. And Unitarians are leading the way in many instances. The other piece of this piece of Transylvanian Unitarians, I, for some reason, particularly love. Perhaps I have a little bit of Sekla blood in my history, I don't know. But this is a picture of a Sekla gate. You heard the Sekla hymn that was sung at the beginning of our service. Sekla gates are in front of most houses in Simenfalva, and they mark their theme of resilience and stubbornness. You heard Reverend Ertzebet describe her community as stubborn, and it's because many of them are ethnically Sekla. According to their traditions, the Sekler were descended from Attila's Huns, and they were transplanted to Transylvania to guard their frontier during one of their war times. And we kept asking Reverend Ferenz, our tour guide, now what is this about the Seklas? We'd never heard of Sekla. What is this Sekla thing, and what is this with the gates? And bit by bit, we came to understand that they were ethnically Sekla, religiously Unitarian, culturally Hungarian, and all of that mattered to them. So every house has a Sekla gate in front of that you enter into to get into their main courtyards. And we experienced their Sekla theme of stubbornness kind of everywhere we went. There is a strong community theme in Transylvania. They fed us every meal in a different home, sharing homemade sweets and breads, helping one another gather wood for the season, walking to church together, community lunch after the Thanksgiving service. Here in Salem, we strive to build our church community as we expand locally and nationally in support of our values. Rallies, forums, share the plate are only a few of the ways we work on community. There are strong themes of traditions. Neighboring kids invited Simenfalva to their fall harvest. We came upon them dancing down the street one afternoon in their traditional dress to traditional music and sharing traditional wine. Yes, they brought a bottle of wine to each of our lips, and we each took a slug of their homemade wine. A tradition of men and women sitting separately during service. We never understood why. We never really asked. We just honored their tradition. Homemade wines and palenka served at every meal, and the ever-present role of animals in their daily lives. We know we here at home have traditions we follow, both in our congregation, like the flower communion, the water communion, coffee hour, and in these days, unfortunately, the age-old tradition of protest, beginning with the Revolutionary War and continuing through civil rights, women's rights, and now the deplorable situation of our current administration. I aspire to reclaiming the positive tradition of good outcomes of peaceful protest now. I am proud to be a member of a congregation that strives for this most important tradition, that of social justice. Thank you.
When we visited the Simenfalva Church, we presented Reverend Ersabeth and the congregation with a framed photo of our chalice window on behalf of UUCS. We also gave individual gifts to the members who welcomed us into their homes. Though, to be honest with you, we, having talked to those of you who had gone before, we were thinking we would need a gift each. And since we had a different home for every meal, we didn't bring enough. And we feel bad about that. Anyway, back to script. Reverend Ersabeth and her congregants reciprocated by presenting the UUCS with several items, including a tablecloth, which is traditionally used to cover the Lord's table. Now, we were there for Thanksgiving, and when we entered the church, the chalice that would contain the wine and the bowls of bread were on a table and covered with a cloth like this. And so that is considered the Lord's table. So they then gave us one that we could bring back to share with all of you. So this is yours. Additionally, they gave us a framed photo of their church. It's absolutely beautiful. We don't have it with us today, but we will be presenting it to you and having it hung in the church here. Then, when we were there, a book came out, and we actually got it the day it came off the press. It is a book of all the churches, the Unitarian churches in the entire Transylvania. So we bought a copy to present to you. It's beautiful photographs, but you're going to have to learn Hungarian to read it. It only came in Hungarian. So maybe we could have Hungarian classes or something, but it has absolutely beautiful pictures, and you will find some of our church in there. So anyway, we wanted to give these to you all, and we also got, like any trip, it was a pilgrimage, but you can't help but get souvenirs, right? And so we did bring some of the souvenirs and other items we collected along the way, and they're going to be on display in the fellowship hall afterwards. We encourage you to come, and we'll share more stories if you want. And we love to talk about it, as you probably have heard. But we also really, really want to encourage all of you to consider a pilgrimage yourself. It was a transformative experience, and we would love to support others who want to go.
So to our sisters, our brothers, our siblings in Simenfalva, on behalf of this congregation, we say, Christendom, thank you for these gifts.
So before King Sigismund and the Edict of Torda, many Unitarians, as you heard, were unfairly treated, even tortured and jailed for simply expressing their true self. Unfortunately, we know that people in our community, our country, are experiencing the same unfair and cruel treatment. The financial offerings you give today help sustain this congregation as a place where all voices can be heard, where truth can be spoken, and everyone is welcome to worship and love as they choose. This month, we will share our good fortune with Marion Polk Food Share, whose mission it is to bring people together to end hunger and its root causes. So food can be placed in the little red wagon that's coming to the front of the sanctuary, and financial donations may be made during the passing of the baskets or online at uusalem.org. Thank you so much for your generosity.
Hello. Okay. Sorry. Our offertory today is going to be "Find a Stillness." It is in our hymnals. It's based on the melody is from a Transylvanian hymn, and then a man by the name of Carl Seberg took a Transylvanian Unitarian text and put it to this song, and then Larry Phillips made some harmony, and we're going to perform it for you now.
Stillness, let the stillness
Will you join me in giving thanks? The words are in your order of service or checked it here. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our many gifts, including these offerings. Each week we light our social justice lantern from the community chalice. However, our chalice seems to have run its course on its own. So we have a flame here. This symbolizes all the ways that you bless the world with your acts of love and kindness and community service. Now that one is still burning way down inside. So as we extinguish our chalices, I'm going to offer you a Transylvanian blessing. Where there is faith, there is love. Where there is love, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is blessing. And where there is blessing, there is God. And where there is God is all we need.
Two very quick announcements for you. As was mentioned during Joys and Sorrows, this gorgeous new stained glass has been installed. The dedication for that will be at the end of the service next Sunday, February 22nd, including a chance to meet and to express our gratitude to the artist who created it. And if you are part of our Common Read workshops on social change now, the gathering today will be at 1 p.m. here in the sanctuary. That's because our Trillium Cups group will be meeting at 2 p.m. in the Fellowship Hall. So in order to share the building, do not go to the Fellowship Hall as you did last week. Come in here at 1 p.m. instead. There's always plenty of other things going on. You'll see them on the back of the order of service, in the Friday updates, in the monthly newsletters, and you are welcome and invited to participate in all the ways that are right for you.
As we sing our closing hymn, there you go, yeah. The choir is going to sing it first in Hungarian. The lyrics will be up there if you want to give it a shot. I'd love to hear it. And then we'll all come together and do the English verses that we know so well. I believe in you.
Please join us in saying our closing words. May faith in the spirit of life, hope for the community of earth, and love for the sacred in one another be ours now and in all the days to come.
Did you have the potatoes?
I was shocked at the number of people. I asked how many other people were. So fun. And I was like,